What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we got a good one for you guys. In today's video, we're going to be doing something a little bit different though. You've seen us feature videos before where we pick a player at every position. Typically, it's going to be the biggest bust, the biggest sleeper, but one thing we haven't yet done using this format is to try and attempt to create the perfect lineup. Our goal will be to select one wide receiver, a running back, quarterback, and tight end, all of them, of course, going in different stages of the draft. We want to present you something that's actually attainable. On top of that, these are only going to consist of players that we are highly targeting, meaning if we were actually able to leave the draft with these 4 players leading at that position, we would feel extremely confident in our roster. Before we do get into the video though, just a quick shout out and reminder that if you do enjoy the content we're putting out, at this point in the off season, we're literally putting out 11 videos a week. We're working our butts off here, and if you guys do enjoy the content and want to show your support, the best way to do that is of course hitting that like button. It goes a massive way in helping grow the channel. As you know, we're on the road to 100k subscribers. At the time of this upload, we have actually hit 90,000. That is a massive milestone within itself, and we have you guys to thank for it. For those of you newer viewers, maybe you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, consider taking today as an opportunity to hit that subscribe button, and believe me, we will greatly appreciate it. Also, guys, be advised, our draft packages are all available now. You can access those at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. There you gain access to our tier-based rankings, our sleepers, our targets, our busts, risk ratings on all draftable players, video player breakdowns, access to our private Discord community group, and more. So if that's something that does interest you, once again, that can be found at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Link for that, as always, in the description box below. With that being said though, it's time we hop over to our stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was which tight end, excluding Taysom Hill, finished the season with the most rushing yards. The correct answer was actually Evan Engram. Congratulations to Sawyer Hebbs, the first to get this right on YouTube, and as for Twitter, at Zach_Whitman. Once again, congratulations to both of you. But as for today's stat of the day, last season there were 12 quarterbacks to throw 11 or more interceptions. Only 2 of those quarterbacks though finished the season without a pick six. One of them was named Teddy Bridgewater, but who was the second quarterback? Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Without further ado though, let's hop right into the players, and to begin this list, as per usual, we're going to begin with the player listed in the thumbnail. That player is DK Metcalf of the Seattle Seahawks. Currently, DK Metcalf has an ADP of about the 17th overall pick, so in today's exercise, trying to create the perfect fantasy lineup, but to provide you guys with something reasonably attainable that you could leave your draft with, DK Metcalf will serve as our second round pick. Not looking at overall rankings though, and looking at how he stacks up against other top wide receivers, he's currently coming off the board as the wide receiver 7. We actually have him ranked as the wide receiver 6, and while that may not seem like a massive discrepancy, we're not talking about comparing the wide receiver 50 to the wide receiver 52, clearly 2 players that you could nab in any league you want. No, we're talking about top 10 players here. In the first 2 rounds, oftentimes the players that are available for us to pick largely is dictated by our draft position. For example, somebody heading into a 2021 fantasy draft with the pick 12 in a 12-team league, they may have their eye on a player that's projected to go off the board at pick 10, and of course we're always hoping players fall to us and we're getting a better value, but in all actuality, you could run that draft several times with different competitors, and the most likely outcome is that pick 12 will not land that player projected to come off the board at pick 10. For that, it should speak volumes to how high we are on DK Metcalf, a top 7 wide receiver we do have ranked higher than consensus, and the best part about DK Metcalf is that you don't need to invest a first round pick in order to land him. Like I had mentioned, he's coming off the board 17th overall, so in order to land him, all you need is a back end to middle first round pick. In that stage of the draft, we have a ton of super solid running backs, even a solid tight end option with Travis Kelce. So part of what makes DK Metcalf such a strong pick for us not only has to do with how talented he is as a player, what he was able to do last season on the field, what he's been doing so far this offseason, but no, a major factor into why we like DK Metcalf largely has to do with where he's falling in drafts. As a player and individual contributor though, he finished last season with just 129 targets, a mere 83 receptions, but what was so impressive was that he was able to put up over 1,300 receiving yards and double-digit touchdowns. For him to be able to do that on such a small amount of volume, that really goes a long way in letting you know how exactly safe the pick in DK Metcalf is for the upcoming season. Metcalf actually finished last season with the 17th most receptions in the NFL. Despite that, he really did a lot with them, finishing finishing this season with the 6th most receiving yards, also finishing 7th in total touchdowns. And when it came to fantasy points per game, this was an area DK Metcalf finished top 10 in, ranking 9th at the end of the season. As we know, DK Metcalf did leave a bit of yards on the field, considering Metcalf did finish 2nd in air yards in the entire league, 3rd in deep targets, accomplishing all that despite ranking outside the top 80 in team target market share. So there is a few ways that DK Metcalf can improve without any significant changes to this offense. For starters, his team target market share could definitely increase. We saw Tyler Lockett playing as one of the most inconsistent wide receivers last season, and although the team does have a long-term commitment into Tyler Lockett, he definitely helps the team get in scoring opportunities and makes plays when the plays are needed. Anybody watching this Seattle Seahawks team last season knows DK Metcalf is by far the future at receiver. There is no doubt in my mind after seeing the levels of success that Metcalf had last year that they don't try to amplify that. We're talking about a player who's a complete monster, a defensive mismatch no matter which team they're facing. Oftentimes when he's lining up against opposing defenders, it looks like he's playing against college players out there because he stands at 6'3". He's a whopping 230 pounds. We're talking about a player who runs a 4.33. That's right, that's in the 99th percentile. It doesn't end there. He also has a 99th percentile speed score, 97th percentile burst score, and even comes in with a 91st percentile catch radius. This is one of the most elite athletes we've ever seen hit the field, and with unprecedented size, pairing him with a quarterback like Russell Wilson means the sky is the limit for his future. DK Metcalf is hands down one of my favorite picks in the entire draft, and considering that you can nab him in the middle of the 2nd round, that allows you to pair him with a really strong 1st round option, which is a factor we strongly have to consider when we're putting together the perfect fantasy lineup. Considering this is a lineup though, we do have to move on to the next position, the next player, and we're going to actually move over to the quarterback position, and the next player in our perfect lineup is going to be Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. Now admittedly, this is going to be a pick that's a bit more on the riskier side. Easily out of the 4 players in today's video, I would classify him as the most risky. Reason being, of course, he is coming off of a significant injury, likely going to lead to limited production on the ground using his legs. Maybe we see a decrease in rushing touchdowns. There's also, of course, the chance that he may not see the field. Maybe he has a setback throughout this offseason. It is an unfortunate reality, but when it comes to Dak Prescott, the best part about it is we're not drafting today. By the time the actual fantasy draft comes around, we should know by far if he's either healthy, going to be starting. It's possible that he could need more time for recovery, but by then we should get news in the other direction as well. And if he's fully healthy, fully ready to go, even if he is going to be lacking some of that rushing production, the fact that Dak Prescott has the combination of Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb, easily one of the best wide receiver trios in the entire league. I don't believe anybody could truly doubt that. So even if he is a bit less mobile, he's going to have to rely more on his arm. This will, of course, help him in remaining healthy for the whole season, thus reducing his risk while simultaneously dropping his ceiling and floor. Overall, though, it really shouldn't concern you too much. The fact that Dak Prescott's coming off the board as the 5th quarterback more than makes up for the potential drop in ceiling and floor, because in a 5-game sample from what we saw from Dak last season, in those games as a starter with this same offense, Dak Prescott was putting up over 26 fantasy points per game. Looking at the best quarterback in the league last season across 16 games when it comes to the area of fantasy points per game, there was one quarterback that did edge out the rest. It was actually Josh Allen. To be more specific, he actually finished with 25.3 fantasy points per game. So even when compared to Dak Prescott in his 5-game sample, Prescott showed to all of us that he has the upside to potentially be the best quarterback in all of fantasy. While it's unrealistic to truly expect that with him coming back from an injury, we do know that he does have the tools available to him to get that done. So if for some reason Dak Prescott is ahead of schedule, he's recovering quicker, or maybe his recovery process goes much better than expected, it is within his range of outcomes to put up similar numbers to what he did at the beginning of last season. Is it the most likely outcome? I wouldn't say that, but as I had mentioned, with him coming off the board as the 5th quarterback, falling all the way down in some drafts into the 5th and 6th round, we definitely have to take that value into consideration, because a player like Patrick Mahomes is coming off the board over 25 draft spots higher, and in order order to make what we would consider a well-balanced fantasy roster that has enough upside to compete with any team in the league, sometimes you do have to take on a bit of additional risk where you see fit, and with Dak Prescott having the combination of both value and upside, it's a no-brainer top pick for me at the quarterback position. I will give a few honorable mentions though. I really do love Matthew Stafford. He's going in that range where if you do miss out on some of these top 10 guys, the first player out of that next tier of players that may not have the same rushing floor, I strongly believe Stafford has some of the most upside out of any quarterbacks being drafted in that range. But if you miss out on him, Trey Lance is an excellent late round option. If you're looking for another early round guy, one of the top targets we're looking at definitely is Kyler Murray. Obviously, he won't fit into this video because he costs so much in the draft. We simply just can't get all of the good players we want and afford Kyler Murray, but that is in no way a negative reflection on how we feel about him for 2021. All right, guys, we're moving over to the next position. That's right, the running back. And because we took DK Metcalf in the second round, 17th overall, that is going to allow us to still use our first round selection on a running back. How fitting, because I think all of us are desperately trying to get at least one running back in the first 2 rounds. But like we had mentioned earlier, DK Metcalf came with a hefty price tag. He came with the 17th overall pick. That is going to limit what options we would theoretically have in the first round, limiting us to a middle to back end running back 1. The player though that we chose in this video, a realistic pair to DK Metcalf that we believe has a ton of upside in safety. That player is of course Cam Akers of the LA Rams. For starters, we have been very vocal this offseason about how high we are on the LA Rams offense. When you're combining Sean McVay, one of the best offensive masterminds, with an arm talent like Matthew Stafford, all the reports coming out of camp thus far is that Sean McVay is completely blown away with how successful Stafford's been, how much of an upgrade he's been over Goff, and due to Matthew Stafford being in the league for so long and being on a team that's been a perennial disappointment, I think a lot of us start to forget of exactly how talented he is. A baseball player growing up, the strength of his arm alone can easily compete with any quarterback in the league. This means Sean McVay can run his offense at full speed, get as creative as possible because he now has the quarterback to do everything that he's always wanted. There will of course be some growing pains, but this isn't about Stafford, this is about Akers. The point I was trying to make though is that the upside for this team with Stafford is absolutely insane. If this offense were to hit its ceiling, it would by far be the highest scoring offense. And when it comes to running backs, what makes them valuable and what translates to successful fantasy players, having a strong offense is right up there with the top 3 most important attributes. Another very important attribute would definitely be the strength of the defense. An offense can put up a ton of points, but if this offense is also trailing by 2 scores, then it's not reasonable to expect a running back to receive high volume in the 3rd and the 4th quarter. So if we're trying to maximize that volume, not only do we need a high-powered offense, but we need a strong defense to go along with it. A strong defense is definitely something the Rams have. Last season, they actually allowed the second fewest points in the league, one of only 2 teams in the entire NFL to hold teams to under 20 points, easily having the lead over many opponents throughout many games last season. And because this defense is so good and tied to a strong offense as well, even in games where they were a bit down, the Rams weren't a team that gets blown out. They still have a strong offense, still have a solid defense, and when you're down just 1 score, that's not going to be a major hamper to the running back volume. Which leads me to my next point. Cam Akers is a complete workhorse. Sean McVay has came out multiple times throughout this offseason. He says he envisions Cam Akers to continue to build upon his workhorse role. And with the running back behind him being a much smaller statured running back, a body better suited to play more of a change of pace role. We did see Darrell Henderson when getting a higher amount of volume last season that did end up resulting in an injury. But when it came to Cam Akers, Sean McVay in this Rams offense had no fear in loading him up with touches as soon as he earned the workhorse role by week 13. Starting against Arizona and spanning through the playoffs, this was a running back receiving a massive amount of volume. We're talking about a running back that spanning through the NFL playoffs through his final 6 games, received a volume share with 21 touches on the ground, followed by 29, 15, 21, another 28, and rounding it out with 18. If you're telling me a running back on this Rams offense that does have the potential to push for top 8, and Cam Akers is going to be receiving 20 plus touches in that offense, the sky is the limit. We're talking a potential top 5 running back here. Also, of course, the goal that we have in any draft is to build a fantasy championship team. You can't do that without drafting players that could exceed their draft day price tag, and with him coming off the board as the RB8, RB9, that does give us a bit of wiggle room for him to start out slow, but it also allows us the ability to target a player in the second round like DK Metcalf that if we were to go a bit higher and more expensive at running back, we wouldn't be able to nab. With that said though, it's time to move over to the final position we have, the tight end position, and I did make the decision to choose a tight end that was going in the later rounds. The thought behind that was we do have the bones of this team, but we didn't really fill it out completely. Although we have DK Metcalf, undoubtedly very talented wide receiver, we still need a wide receiver too. Also a couple flex receivers to be able to start. We also can't forget we need depth at running back. So those middle rounds, we're talking 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, those should be used for the wide receiver and running back positions. But even though this tight end is being drafted in the later rounds, that's not to say that he doesn't come with a bit of upside. Logan Thomas is the tight end we're talking about, and he finished last season as the tight end 3. And although the argument could be made that it was a product of necessity, the Washington football team definitely lacked weapons at the receiver position, paving the way for Logan Thomas to play a high volume role in the offense. And with the team adding a wide receiver like Curtis Samuel, many people are quick to discredit Logan Thomas as a player who was a one-year wonder. I certainly don't believe that's the case though. Curtis Samuel joining the team, I feel, is more likely to soak up the targets from a player like JD McKissick, somebody that could line up in very similar areas, somebody with a very similar stature. If you're looking to target a big-bodied tight end, the last place you're going to be looking is Curtis Samuel. And on top of that, Logan Thomas is an underrated athlete. The Washington football team as a whole is looking to take a massive step forward. Ryan Fitzpatrick, the new quarterback, say what you want about him, but he is by far an upgrade over anything they've had as of late. Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas. I would not be surprised if this team can compete with many other teams offensively, something we haven't seen out of Washington in a very long time. As an athlete though, like I had mentioned, he's super underrated. I believe he flew under the radar for so long because he had such low draft capital, being drafted in the 4th round. An afterthought to most people, but when looking at his size, his stature, and his athleticism, 6'6", 250 pounds, 89th percentile 40-yard dash, 91st percentile speed score, 71st percentile burst score, 87th percentile agility score, and even a 94th percentile catch radius. This is a player who's not absolutely massive, but is a nightmare for defenses on his own. Many people easily underestimate Logan Thomas. It's one of the reasons he was able to carve himself out a role in a very poor offense, ultimately finishing as a top 3 tight end. And the best part about him is heading into this season, he's currently coming off the board as the tight end 10. Need I remind you, this was after a season in which he finished as a top 3 tight end. Right there, that already screams value, but don't get it mistaken. I'm not expecting him to be able to compete with the likes of Travis Kelce and Darren Waller for weekly upside. Whenever we're drafting a fantasy roster, there is always going to be a bit of give and take. The people who did draft Travis Kelce and Darren Waller invested much higher draft capital in the early rounds, meaning in all likeliness, my wide receivers and running backs are going to be stronger than the person who missed out on their 1st round pick to draft Kelce. His tight end, obviously going to be stronger than Logan Thomas, but if Logan Thomas is able to do anything like he did last season, and there is reason to believe he could potentially improve, I believe he's a slam dunk pick where he's currently going in drafts as the tight end 10. And in order to make this perfect lineup without sacrificing depth at running back and wide receiver, I believe he's the perfect player to fill in that role without sacrificing too much upside. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. We really hoped you enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.